Hi, class, and welcome to week 2. So, this week, what we're going to be talking about is chapter 2. So, again, chapter 1 was more foundation, setting up the course in terms of the different sociological theories that we have, who has contributed to them, and how these experiments and studies are put together, right? So that we can actually have a foundation, right, for what sociology is. Now, in chapter 2, we're actually going to talk about culture and social structure. So, this is actually one of my favorite chapters in teaching because, whenever, we talk about culture, we always say how we appreciate so many different cultures in the world, right? But every once in a while, something may occur, a topic or a theme, and then we'll start to say, like, their culture is doing it totally wrong and we don't believe in what they do, therefore they're shunned, right? Therefore, let's go and change their ways, right? So you're going to notice that, there's going to be a couple of questions that I ask you to ask yourselves. So what would society be like if there was no culture, right? A lot of us would say that it's very boring. It would be more like a robotic system in terms of where maybe we would all eat the same thing. We would all listen to the same type of music. There'd be no variety, right? There'd be no variety. There'd be no diversity. Would you prefer a life in which there are no other cultures other than your own? Why or why not, right? Now, the example of the implementation of a new society and rules. So, if you guys have ever read the book Lord of the Flies, right? Poor Piggy. If you don't know who Piggy is, you better read that book. It's a good book, right? Lord of the Flies is a book where these school-age kids crash into an island and all the adults are killed off. I just totally ruined that part for you, didn't I? So they're totally killed off and they're left to implement a new culture, a new society by themselves. And so you start noticing from the very beginning that everyone's trying to be peaceful and kumbaya and sitting together singing We Are the World, right? And little by little we start to see how corruption takes place. Again, the different things that we see within different cultures and societies. You could also look into 1607, right? Pocahontas time, in terms of Jamestown and the settlements. And, when we're little, we're taught, how, again, Thanksgiving, we celebrate it because we kumbaya together. And, in kindergarten, I have a little one that, that this year will be, probably have to choose whether she wants to be an Indian or she wants to be a pilgrim. Then we'll dress them up, they put on their cute little play, they make their little, their little hats, their little Quaker outfits, they play on their drums, right? But it's not until later on in life we learn that it didn't really go as we are really taught when we're little, right? And again, all of this having to do with culture and society. So culture is defined and referred to the social heritage of people. Those learned patterns for thinking, feeling, acting. They are transmitted from one generation to the next, including embodiment of these patterns in material items. So culture is what we are taught from the second we are born, right? It is up to us whether we continue practicing our culture, our traditions, our values that we're taught. I'm Mexican. My parents are both from Mexico, believe it or not, right? But I am full Mexican, and my parents felt that it was very important for us to continue our culture and our traditions as we grew older. And I actually have incorporated many of our traditions. We practice. I'm blanking out now, right? But the different cultures and traditions that we practice in terms of language, right? Passing on language to my kids. We practice Three Kings Day. That is a religious event, right? The Epiphany, January 6th, within the Catholic religion, where in Mexico, it's practiced more of a Christmas. You receive all your big gifts on the Three Kings Day rather than on Christmas Day, right? Cinco de Mayo, I dress my girls up for the 16th of September. My husband is Irish, and so we really make it a point to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, not in the way that it's intended for the green beer and everything, but why do we celebrate St. Patrick's Day? Why is it such a big deal in Ireland, right? So holding on to those cultures, holding on to those values, the beliefs, the customs, right? The food, the music, everything includes all what is culture, right? We're going to talk a little bit about society. So how is society defined by a group of people who live within the same territory, right? So society, those that live among you. Chances are that your society, they're all not going to have the same components of culture that everyone practices, right? I always used to joke and say that in college, I used to have salute to the seven continents in terms of friends. I literally had friends for almost every different from every different continent, right? But again, those are different types of components of culture where we get to know a person's culture, we understand it, we predict a great deal of their behavior. Not too long ago, Ricky Gervais, the actor, was really headlining this festival in China where it's a festival dedicated to eating dogs. Well, here in the United States, we understand as dogs being pretty much a man's best friend, right? I have two puppies, Vanellope and Bailey. I cannot imagine what it would be like to eat Vanellope or Bailey, right? We treat it differently. In China, it is their tradition. It is their, their belief in what they have placed. There's a reason why they practice that tradition. Ricky Gervais felt that since he did not agree, he was going to go over and try to stop that festival. In fact, he did try to stop that festival, right? It's kind of dying down in terms of the tradition over centuries in China, but they still practice it. Now, again, when we talk about, looking at different cultures, the term ethnocentric comes up, right? Ethnocentric means that if other people do not practice what you believe in, right, then they must be wrong, right? And therefore, we're going to go and we're going to change their ways. Now, how would we feel if someone came over to the United States and said, you know what? I heard you guys are having a bacon festival down at the fairgrounds. And he's be like, well, yeah, we love bacon here in the United States. We have them on our cheeseburgers. We make them, in so many different dishes. Well, what's to say that in a religious sense or in their customary sense, that's wrong? So should someone from the outside come in and say, so ban all bacon in the United States in those festivals? Same way, right? Are we allowed to go into different cultures and say, nope, you need to stop practicing that tradition, right? So if you understand, once you start realizing this is more of a more complex system, right? Rather than just pinpointing, you're bad, this is good, this is not right, this is right. Then we're going to learn about norms, right? So these things are they tell us what we should, what we ought, what we must do, right? So these norms in the way that it's normal. There's social rules that specify appropriate and inappropriate behavior in given situations. So norms, right? You just watched the video of the kid throwing the tantrum, right? At the grocery store. Now, that is not normal for us, right? Because we just can't go around just throwing hissy fits everywhere we want, right? That's not the norm. If you see a kid throwing a tantrum, everyone's going to stop and go like, oh, what's wrong with that kid? That kid has issues. And then more likely than not, they're going to look at the parents and be like, oh, you better control your kid, right? So that's not the norm. Imagine if it was the norm, if we went to the grocery store and kids were throwing tantrums all the time, throwing things, throwing toys, exactly acting like that kid in that video. Then we would not even give two coots about it, right? I guess that's not even a word, huh? I was thinking of a different word. We would not think anything about it, right? We would just simply look at them and be like, okay, well, whatever, carry on, right? Cahoots, that's the word I was looking for. I'm so sorry. Folkways, it has to do with the customary ways and ordinary conventions, right? That we carry out our daily activities. There's no moral significance to a folkway. So folkway would be an example. Say, for example, when my husband and I got married, when you attend a wedding, it's customary to dress up, right? You want to look a certain way because it's a formal event, right? Well, one of my husband's cousins decided to come to the wedding in board shorts, flip-flops, and a tank top. Now, right away, a lot of people turned and looked at him thinking like, we're not at the beach. It's not a beach wedding. It's a wedding, right? Now, did he break any laws? No, it's just a folkway. Now, mores. Mores is where actual moral significance takes place. So, as we know, it is not socially acceptable for a woman to drink or smoke while pregnant. And we know this because studies have shown that if women drink or smoke, they're more likely, they have a higher risk of um, giving, birth to a child that may have some type of um, deficiency, right? And so we see that there's a moral attachment to it, just like we're not allowed to date our family members. At one point, we did, but that was a whole different reason why. It was more property, more inheritance, etc., right? But again, these have more of a moral significance where we really like stop and think and be like, oh, that's wrong. You should not do that, right? And then a law, right? We're very familiar with laws. A law would be, right? You cannot drive a vehicle without a driver's license, right? Again, we're going to go into talking about values, into different types of symbols, and then how language plays a really big role as well. As we go further into chapter 2, we're going to talk about cultural unity and diversity. And you're going to learn again, here is where actually you're going to learn about exactly what ethnocentrism is, right? You're going to talk about cultural universals, cultural integration. Cultural universals are anything that is part of every culture, but it varies from culture to culture. Some examples would be food, music, dance, sports, etc., right? All societies have their own food, right? All societies have their own type of music, their own dances, their own sports. So cultural universals is that we all share it, but we may practice them differently. Another cultural universal would be, everyone in every society, every culture, every race is going to die, right? So how do we handle grief? Here in the United States, it is customary that when someone passes away, you have like a reception after the burial where you come together, you share a meal. Some would say that it's like a party, right? I remember when my mom first came over to the United States, she's from Mexico, and she did not understand why you would be celebrating and being happy and throwing a party if a loved one died. In Mexico, it is more reverent in the way where, it's called el luto. It means that, you're in mourning. So you wear black for a certain period of time. This was the customs. Not so much now. We're moving away from it, right? You wore black for a year. It was nothing a celebration. You were in mourning. In Spain, they have the tradition where they hire lloronas, criers. The more lloronas, the more criers that you have at your funeral, that means how much, how important your family is, and it's showing some kind of prestige and some kind of respect level of how many lloronas you have there, right? Very different from the United States, right? Then we talk about cultural integration. It concerns the adoption of mass consumer culture, where everything from fashion to sport, music to television, right? All this cultural integration that we get, especially now with mass media, right? It's gone to the point where it kind of seems where if we see it on TV, we kind of tend to believe that it's true. We don't even challenge it at times, right? And then ethnocentrism, exactly what I had just been talking about when I was giving the example of the different festivals that we may have around the world. So again, it's very, very difficult to not practice ethnocentrism because again, chances are we believe the things that we do, we practice those values and traditions because of what we've learned since we were little. So you're going to notice that I have a couple examples of ethnocentrism. Later this week, I'm going to be posting a video on a rites of passage in a different culture other than the United States and how they practice on how a man is going through the transition of a boy into manhood. Many students are thinking like, oh my goodness, there's no way on earth we would ever do that, right? And again, it's a great example of showing ethnocentrism, right, to its fullest. We're going to talk about cultural relativism, so what's right and what's wrong in terms of cultural specific, child spanking. Is it abuse? Is it not? Is it right? Is it not wrong? Then we're going to talk about subcultures. your discussion question this week is actually going to be about subcultures and countercultures. Oftentimes, every once in a while, I'll have a student that says, "Oh, Miss White, I don't belong to a subculture. I don't belong to a counterculture," right? In our lives, we are going to be part of some type of subculture. Okay, and you're going to understand why once you start learning the definitions between the two. As you grow older, as you go through different stages in your life, you're going to notice that your subcultures are going to change. Some may stay the same, but some may change. Okay? So examples give a subculture. Goths, for example. Goths tend to identify themselves by dressing up in black or dark colors and wearing pale makeup. I've had students say, I'm the subculture of being a hipster because of the music I listen to, because of the clothes that I wear, that I associate myself with that branding, with that group. Think of all the cliques. Subcultures could be known as cliques, right? These cliques that you belong to in high school. You know, if you were the nerds, you were with the nerds, right? Now I'm stereotyping. You're going to see that all this, again, falls into this big web, right? You know, the different groups that we had the nerds, we had the jocks, we had, you know, the choirs kids, you know, etc. And these are all that places us into subcultures. Now, countercultures, subcultures is very innocent. You're not trying to make a point. You're not trying to make a stance against mainstream society. Counterculture, on the other hand, is deviating away from what's considered to be normal of society. So they, in terms, are going against social mainstream, right? An example of a counterculture would be like the hippies, right? The hippie movement during Vietnam War. They were there to not only make a stand in the way that they dress, but there was a political agenda of what they were trying to achieve. They were trying to bring peace. They were trying to bring the end of war, right? You're going to notice that towards the end, there's going to be different videos in terms of different beliefs and traditions. Lastly, we're going to be ending with social culture. Now, whereas culture has to do with the customs of people, society are the people that are practicing the customs. So it's the interweaving of people's interactions, the relationships in more or less reoccurrent and stable patterns, right? So these different patterns that we are organized, right, within society. Durkheim, you're going to be learning about Durkheim in terms of what social facts are. Example, you're entering college for the first time, right? It's just like starting school, right? We just started school, learning a new routine. If you're at a new school, you have to learn, you know, where everything is, right? This social structure, right, that affects, it brings a solidarity, right? If you're entering college for the first time, you're going to meet new people for the first time. Understanding social structure, describing our social environment. You're going to learn about statuses, roles, groups, institutions, and the different types of societies. You're going to be learning about ascribed and achieved status. Achieved is something that you work really, really hard. College students, you guys, for example, right? You're going to school so that you can receive that diploma in order to then show employers that you have the skills of what it takes to do that job. You just don't show up at school and say, you know what? Okay, I think I want to get in my engineering degree. And so can you just please fill out the piece of paper and then just give it to me? Does not work like that. And then they stamp it and like, there you go, good job, right? No, you actually have to achieve that, right? The Olympians, right? We just had the closing ceremonies last night, you know, for the Olympics, right? That is achieved status. Those Olympians, you know, had to put in rigorous amount of time and practice and effort to get to the Olympics. Although we're going to talk about that as well, right? Now, ascribed is something different. This is where you're pretty much born into the status that you have. So Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is the person that she is because of her family, right? Her her parents own all the Hilton hotels, therefore it's that empire that they've built, and she really did not have to work to achieve it. Some may say that now with her being a DJ, things have shifted a little, maybe, but then other people would say, no, she's a DJ because of all the connections that she had, right? So achieve, it's something you work for. Ascribed is pretty much something that has been given to you, right? Ascribed would be your age. I just can't lie and say, you know what? I'll be 25 today. From here on out, I'm 25 for the rest of my life. No, we can't do that. That's something, right, that we cannot change. Your master status, this is who you are. For example, my master status is I'm a mother, right? I have 2 girls. I'm a sibling. I have brothers. I'm an instructor, right? I'm married. So these are the master statuses that is pretty much setting you up for your role of what you are, what you do. And again, these roles can change over time, right? Our roles can have conflicts. They can have strains of who we are, okay? And lastly, we're going to be ending with aggregates, and we're going to be ending with categories and pretty much telling you, what an aggregate is. Aggregate is simply a collection of anonymous individuals who are at one place at the same time. So think of when you're at a sporting event, right? Tons and tons of people, collection of people in that arena, right? Do I know everyone in that arena? Absolutely not, right? So it's literally a collection of anonymous people at the same place at the same time. Now, a category is a collection of people who share a characteristic such as status, a physical characteristic, behavior pattern, or something that is deemed of social significance, right? So here is a category that you're placed with others. So if you're college students, right? You're all in the category that you're all going to school to graduate, to receive your diploma so that you can go into the working field, right? So you have something in, you have something in common with one another, okay? So that's about it in terms of chapter 2. I hope you guys enjoy it. Like I said, this is, again, here we're building the foundation to what we are going to be learning. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.